5 o'clock, call the meeting to order. Please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now turn the budget workshop over to John.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for showing up for this meeting number, whatever it is. If you bear with me, I put together a memo, which I started earlier, finally finished it 5 minutes ago. Doesn't look like much, but here it is. It's a summary of where we are to date. Basically, most of this is stuff you should not be surprised to hear. It talked about rising property taxes, and I described the property taxpayers at the breaking point. Budgets have been rising, and the town to a great extent has used more reserves than they would like to moderate the burden. So at this point, on your summary sheet, you will notice that the summary that Bernice ran shows an increase of approximately 1.7%. And as I said, it's at this stage of the process. This stage has about a week to run, so very much timely in summary. I did point out that the current budget numbers show over $12 million in requests, of which $6 million is the school, $600,000 is Lincoln County. So these two items that we're not even discussing here represent 60% of the money the town has to raise. And Wiscasset, of course, as we all know, is facing changing demographics and miserable economy. And our town population is aging, and many of them, we see them in the office, are struggling financially. And like I point out in a snide manner, their property taxes are due on April 26th, and they're likely to be watching our budget discussions with great interest because it affects them long term. Where we are on the current budget, typos. This year's budget has been cut numerous times after much discussion between Selectmen, Budget Committee, and department heads. Whoops, there's another typo. Sorry about that. I just finished it a few minutes ago, and I thought I caught the typos. While one of our goals is to provide financial stability among our departments, we're reaching the point where our employees are feeling uncertainty and morale is beginning to be adversely affected. Challenge, of course, this is the first day of the rest of our lives, or the first day of the future. So Wiscasset needs to plan for future, review how it is currently operating, decide what municipal services it wishes to provide, and what the taxpayers are willing and able to support. And as I said, these are hard choices. And I do point out the obvious. You'd be prudent to evaluate all options now while recognizing that even significant changes now may not yield immediate results. And so in the second page, I said the options include. And you've seen all these, you've heard all these, you've discussed all these. Continue to raise property taxes, draw on reserves, reduce spending further, raise user fees, reduce municipal services, liquidate assets, defer spending and maintenance, seek additional grants and fundraising, and maybe even borrow short term to smooth things out, which is just a list of everything, what the options are. Internally you can rate these things as to what is desired and what is not. Decisions within the week. So we've reached, I believe we've reached the point where there are a few departments that are introducing some supplemental information, but I just thought I'd put that out there, and then we look at the summary and where we are with a 1.7% increase. The bulk of that, as you can see, came from volunteered by Lisa from Parks and Recreation, $31,500. Police Department, and he had to take the laces out of his shoes to get it down this far. $27,016, and the transfer station $15,233. I looked at some other lines, but you're only talking 5,000 here, 10,000 there, for a total of maybe 30,000. I was looking at contractual services, looking at the clerical help for the Historic Preservation Committee. They didn't use any last year, but again, less than $1,000. So in total, I could probably drag down about another 15,000, but I'm nervous about reducing contractual because that includes legal, and legal has a tendency to just suddenly grow, and once it gets going, it's like Jack and the Beanstalk. It's dormant and then it's not. So that's my 2 cents worth. And if anybody has questions, Bernice was putting these numbers together until 2 o'clock this afternoon. And attached to that, you'll also find the summary expense by department. And you can go through any of those. How would you like to start with the board? Would you like to start with the summary sheet, find out the obvious, what the percent changes are?
Yes, please.
Okay. On the far right, when you see the percent change, you'll see that almost everything is less than 1% increase. The administration is down 0.13%. That's partly because that's mostly because I'm not taking benefits. Airport is up only a little bit, half a percent on animal control. At one point, I was thinking about putting an absolute hard figure in there and just dealing with the expense on a per call basis.
That's actually,
The big word.
that's actually not in the percentage format.
Oh, it's not, what is it?
But it's not.
Okay, anyway,
It's
I
a
was talking.
51% increase with animal control.
Oh. Yeah, all right. Anyway, I was thinking, it works out about $100 a call, and we're past, I think we're pretty much past our full year's budget, aren't we, at this point?
Yes.
At the half point, waypoint, we're pretty much through that. So as I said, I looked at it, it's about $100 a call. Talked about whether we could recover the additional cost from the individual animal owners, but apparently fines on things like that can only be set by the state. So that was one failed effort. Code enforcement down slightly, the red. Yes. I'm sorry, Judy.
Did I miss, did you say that was the final figure? The county did give you a figure? Because I thought last time they had not
Oh,
given you animal control figures.
this was what they submitted, wasn't it?
No,
Oh, we got another more.
we don't have a budget with them. We have a contract with them, and it's basically an open-ended. They go as the calls come in as needed. So we just based it on what we have spent year to date, which is $8,700, almost $8,800. And knowing that that's only for 2 quarters of the year, that it's probably gonna cost us double unless the calls are dramatically less the second half of the fiscal year, which they weren't last year.
The animal control manager, for want of a better term, Lieutenant Murphy over in the sheriff's office, he's trying to get a meeting of all the 13 towns that participate in the program, and as of this point, it hasn't happened. But he is trying to trying to have some full-time people, because the demand, the demand is growing all the time, and it's harder and harder with that many towns to work with the staff they have. And let's see, the municipal.
Yes, I'm sorry, Bob.
Sorry.
It's averaging $100 per call.
Yep, I just looked, they gave me a summary, which I can read out to you. Dogs at large is the biggest.
Well, that's, I mean, I kind of seen how that worked in the past, and I mean, that seems incredibly high. I mean, I can understand that some calls might be kind of complicated, but I mean, a lot of them are just going out and picking up the dead cats out of the road. That's not worth $100.
No, but then they gotta travel from wherever they are at the time, it could be anywhere. So you pay for that, and then the dead cat, road crew.
It's still a lot of money. I don't care if it
But
came
I
from
can tell
bank.
I can tell you what they are.
And also, you gotta remember that that includes the animal shelter, and and medical too. It's not just for the officers to go for the call.
Right, no, but I'm just talking about the per call. I understand about the contract with the animal shelter, and I realize that's gone up too.
22 dogs at large, 5 needed a license, dangerous dogs, and keeping dangerous dog, 32 cat complaints. Animal trespass, 19, owner institutionalized, cruelty complaints, 7, rabid animals, possible, 8, other violations, 69. So that's how it comes out.
That seems like a lot of calls.
Is that for a fiscal year or just for the first half of the year?
No, I think that's the whole thing. I think, I'm pretty sure it was calendar year, he doesn't actually say it. But when I was taught, yeah. Yeah, total.
2018.
Yeah, total.
For 2018, it was how many?
170.
170 calls?
170 incidents, I mean, some of them would be relatively straightforward.
So if we subtracted out the animal shelter out of that, it wouldn't be $170. It wouldn't be $100 a call for $17,000.
All right. Well, let's see. The Mid-Coast Humane Shelter was $3,700 last year. Doesn't make a ton of difference. Yes, Kathy?
Okay, you've averaged it to $100 a call, but a call isn't just getting there and doing something, it's the entire process. They leave, they pick up or do what they have to do, if it's a trip to the shelter and all of that, so it's really everything included with each animal incident or whatever you want to call it. Okay, I just want to get it straight in my mind.
It could be reduced significantly if people were encouraged to watch on things like a neighbor reported them twice for dog at large. They were eating my wife's tomatoes. Dog eating tomatoes. I have no idea. Yeah, don't know. Those ticked off. What's that?
Kind of tomatoes.
Ripe tomatoes.
If you take the $10,000 contracted price and the $2,000 for travel and expenses, which I'm assuming would be mostly the county, that would be $12,000 divided by 170 is about $70 a call. But then they've got, like we said, you've got the kennel, and then you've got medical expenses if they have to have medical expenses once they're there, and supplies.
I would think that would be up to the owner of the animal at that point.
Only if they come and clean it. If they don't come and clean it, then we incur that cost. We incur the euthanizing and everything.
I thought that contract took care of that. The contract we had with the animal shelter.
There's a change in the animal shelter ownership and operation. You might know better than I.
Yeah, the two of them have changed the name from whatever it was before to Mid-Coast or
It was coastal, now it's Mid-Coast.
something
It
like
was
that.
coastal, and now it's
It was
Mid-Coast.
Mid-Coast Animal Society or whatever, and they designated the Edgecombe Shelter as the medical review place for all these animals that have come in that need veterinary care. And they do not accept strays at that facility. All the strays that are picked up go to Brunswick to the other one. So,
See, that could add some expense.
and whether we have to, whether the Lincoln County Animal Control Officers have to transport an animal to Brunswick, or do they just have to go to Edgecombe and then they're taken from there by one of the...
Don't know. Don't
So
know.
I would think that would be how they do it.
But they, yeah. They keep track of the miles, like I said, if someone's up in Whitefield on one call and has to drive down here, depends where the,
And unfortunately, there are too many people who own animals that don't take care of them. And we have to pay for it.
Any more questions on the animal control? Let's go.
yeah. The rest is pretty straightforward. Contractual services shows a jump, but I mean, that's all sorts of, you've gone through that. I mean, it's $35,000 to start the main Yankee negotiations, and routine, unfortunately, expensive legal stuff. We had a number of matters rolling, some quite old, and some new. So going beyond that, the 119 is municipal insurance, and on that particular thing, 3.3 or something.
I just wanted to go back to contractual services. So I'm looking at our current year to date, and we are currently at 75,123. We had budgeted 160,000. We have April, May, June, 3 months to go. Are there large legal bills outstanding or that we're expecting in the next 3 months? That's part one of my question. 4 months, all right. Then part two would be 2 years ago, and I might be wrong on this, but I thought that we had only budgeted a very low number of contractual services the year that we started the lawsuit against MDOT, and we went way over our budget. Wasn't it that year only around 25,000?
That was last year that, yeah, it was last year that we ended up having to go back to the town for what, $90,000, I think it was.
Because we had budgeted 25,000, then we got involved in all that legal stuff with MDOT, so we had to go back to the town. And so then for 2019, we were like, let's not do that again, we made it 160,000. But this year seems to maybe have been a slightly better year. I'm just wondering, even with the Maine Yankees stuff, do we need to budget almost $200,000 for contractual services?
But 160,000 is the total for the contractual services from last year.
Right, that's the budget, but the spending isn't there yet. But spending, we've only spent 75,000.
We haven't paid for the audit yet,
Okay, so it's gonna be, that would be 95.
and then the $35,000 is added in here for Maine Yankee.
But that would be for,
The new year.
25.
so I would be comfortable reducing contractual services from 200,000 to 130,000.
Mhm. Yeah, 160.
Catherine?
I have,
Catherine?
That's one of those line items that you never know what's gonna happen. And as John pointed out, you have 3 or 4 things already in the works that are still requiring legal services. And that, I'm assuming that's part of what this
Yeah.
budget is.
yeah, I was
Some
looking
are
at,
left over, and I mean, lawyers are expensive. And you have to go back to the town with a special town meeting and ask for more
Plus
money.
we also had 3 union contracts we're
Yeah, exactly.
negotiating in the next,
Alright.
have to be done in the next 3 months.
yeah, I generally have a telephone conversation with at least 2 attorneys almost every week, including at 3 o'clock today, around 40 minutes, keep track. And there were 2 on that one.
Ben, did you have something you
sorry,
wanted
Ben.
to say?
I was only saying, the 160,000 we raised 2 years in a row. When we raised it, the previous year, we did knowing we probably would overdraft,
Right.
which we did. I'm a little concerned with the 35,000 for the main Yankee thing, that we might be jumping the gun a little bit on that.
Yes, Catherine?
Well, I thought when, I remember looking over all of that, but it was, I thought Peter Murray said that money would get them started on a lot of the preliminary stuff that would have to be done. And it would probably be done this year, or this budget year.
Yeah, I agree with Catherine. It was almost like seed
And
money.
then, yes, exactly. And then I think perhaps next budget year, we may have to budget some more specifically for the Maine Yankee. So rather than coming up with this huge amount next year and the year after, to maybe do it this way, it's, you know, it's not paying ahead for services, it's paying for the services that you know you're gonna get in this case, I think.
I don't know how many years it's gonna take them to negotiate this with them. but we have what, till 2022?
2022.
Well,
That's
like
not
3
that
years
far.
of negotiating, be a lot of money.
It's,
What did we pay the last time we negotiated with Maine Yankee? That's a big deal, that's a question. Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't on the board then, so I mean, I don't know.
the numbers do jump out at one. And I looked at the contractual service and I said, well, maybe I could take 5,000 out of the Maine Yankee. Maybe I could reduce the data processing by a couple thousand. The engineering consultants, currently budgeting 10. I said, well, maybe 5. And then as I looked at the pressure we put on the existing departments, I said, well, I'll just wait a little bit. And, just play it by ear, because with the attorneys, when those bills come through, you don't realize that you have only spoken to these people, and you tend to forget how expensive they are. But today, I probably $450, something like that, for that conversation. And I got a few others. I do move them along.
Yeah, don't be too polite.
Oh, I'm not. So, what we have to do is.
Okay, thank you.
and then- Yeah, exactly, and I make a note on my paper that when we actually hung up. And then, of course, they're scurrying around in the background and they tell you that he's reviewing documents. What do you say? Thank you. I've been signed up. But that's the problem. There are times where it looks like you're living in the promised land. You don't have to talk to attorneys. You don't have to pay them. And there's other times reality strikes, and sometimes it's only a medium bad versus nasty. And I'm not dismissing the concerns. I'd love to say, boy, we had a great year when it came to attorney's fees, but I'd probably still ask you to do the same thing next year, if I'm still here after this budget process. And I'm on.
Well, the biggest increase is $35,000. That's our biggest increase. I mean, it's roughly the same as we had last year. I mean, the flex cards, that's small. Legal for the town, I mean,
That's actually quite modest.
right.
I was only questioning because of our actual as of today. It's a lot lower than what we budgeted.
Yes, please.
If you take what we've actually spent today, which is 75,123, you add in the 20,500 for the audit that we haven't paid for last year yet, because we haven't got a completed audit. And then you add in the balance of the 5,950 that we owe on the assessing contract, that brings you up to over 100,000. We still have bills that might be incurred in April, May, and June, plus we just recently got the bills for March that are not in this number.
Yeah, I'm not for lowering that one. I just have I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's very hard to operate doing almost anything without having to check something with
I
an
just wanted to
attorney.
bring it up.
No, thank you.
We got ordinances, we got the statutes, and some of these statutes don't make sense. And sometimes the attorneys can figure it out, sometimes not. So that was, let's see, that was contracted services. Any other? We're good for now. So the biggest thing is as we go down to municipal insurance, and that's just what they bill us. At some point, I would start reviewing contracts, but I don't have time. I have to wait for renewal dates and look maybe for just different carriers, different parts of it, but I can't.
But that 3.3% increase also is deceiving because we took your workman's comp and put it in there. So eventually that it's lowering the department and raising it there. So really, it's almost like a wash type of thing.
Right, and that's why, I guess the important thing is that it's a 1.7% overall budget increase versus looking at the individual departments.
Right.
And then,
Yeah, you wanted something?
no, I was gonna say, so what does that, like the other day, it was a 7% increase to taxpayers, this is less, but I figured I'd read it again.
It's right down the bottom,
Oh, keep
page
reading.
1.
Just keep reading.
Look at the bottom of page 1.
Thank you.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Okay, that's pretty much that's pretty much the run through. And as Bernie's calculated, a 1.69% increase. We've got some other things going on, which I didn't mention. We've got 3 apartment units to settle sometime. And there's what the school budget may or may not do, what the county budget may or may not do. And that's about it. And as even the few weeks I've been here go by, more stuff comes to my attention, and has financial consequences. Dennis has his hand up. Yes, Dennis?
No, I was scratching me.
I knew that.
I'll sit on my hands.
So, this, there's, even with these numbers, there's a fair amount of pressure. I don't want to short anybody, and with Dennis, for example, we were talking yet again about the revenues on the EMS side, the ambulance side. And the way our staffing currently is constructed, we've been unable to get a second rig on the road for transports. And what he's trying to do is have an extra person available for second runs, because the transports is where you make the money. And a driver can be asked from the fire department, because they're qualified to run the rigs, and that way it would bring up some revenues. But it would take time, and that's partly why Dennis has been pushing his budget and some changes there. And the other part is that the chief with the 24-hour coverage it's important too, because if you're sending an ambulance out in the middle of the night, it's a lot to ask them to just to go out to a place where people are in distress or whatever, and be secure. And there are enough instances that they've mentioned from time to time where it's very necessary to have a follow-up call with the police, even to an ordinary call. When they get there, they find something going on, and that's kind of a tag team sort of thing, because you need one to do the other, and a lot of these calls and so on will come in the middle of the night, and if we're lacking police support, it's very hard to dispatch an ambulance safely. So that's about it.
Okay, Bernice, I have a few questions. Sure. I see your numbers down below about taking money out of reserves.
Correct.
Just a guesstimate. I'm not saying estimate, a guesstimate.
Okay.
What would we, for fund balance? Nothing?
My recommendation is nothing.
I know what, I agree with you, but what is there for, you think, a guesstimate?
I don't even dare make a guesstimate. I mean, I've gone through and worked some numbers, and I think we will wind up with an addition to the fund balance at the end of this year.
Because I have, I said it last week, and I'll say it again, to get that down to a 2.12% increase, we have to take $300,000 from the reserve. That kind of bothers me, because then that means we're not doing any paving, we're just status quo. And one of them's gonna bite us along the line here. So I just don't know what to do, and I really don't want to increase the taxes 5 and 6%. I just don't want to do it.
I understand that. I mean, I've gone through and worked through and added extra to the excise tax based on from 2012 forward, and I did increase that up by 12.5% over what we had budgeted in the past. There are a few small other things that I put in here that we hadn't budgeted in the past, but I really don't see any other sources of revenue short of taking from reserves or taking from fund balance. And as we all know, taking from fund balance just kicks it down the road too, because in fact, we have a fund balance policy that says we're supposed to have 16% of our previous year's budget in fund balance. And I dare say we haven't followed that policy probably since it was written.
I don't think so, if I remember correctly. Yes, Bob?
Could I ask what you said we might possibly add to the fund balance, what the bottom figure that you're talking about adding to is?
I really don't know, Bob. I mean, I made a quick guess based on what we had left for expenses and what we had for revenues. And we might add 100,000 or so. It may be-
Okay,
it may
add
be
100
more,
to
maybe
what?
less. We had, what, 77,
Okay,
I think,
I
last
couldn't
year.
remember. You know, I've argued with Denise about this because it kind of annoys me not to use that money, but I got to be honest, I didn't realize that we are covering all these accounts that misrepresent their revenue. I didn't realize that was coming out of that. I didn't realize that this capital, but the depreciation in the sewage treatment plant was.
That's a whole completely separate bailiwick, though. That's got nothing to do with the town itself.
You know, this, I guess, I'd like to ask, on this sheet here, the workers' comp has been taken out.
Yeah.
And added to municipal.
Okay,
insurance.
that's all right, I just want to make sure that it was following the same format that we used before. Some of these departments that show they're going down a little bit actually went up a lot, simply by taking that out.
Correct.
And I know Ben said it was hard to follow this, and I said, well, you know, you can look at the other column, but you do have to search a little bit, and it looks to me like these departments haven't really gone down in it, and actually they've gone up.
Well, it's an overall 1.69% increase, and we put a 2% increase in the county with an estimate. So overall, it's a 1.69% including the county. So it has not gone up significantly.
I think what's gone up in each department is your payroll and your insurance.
Which
That's
is-
where you're getting, you're giving the employees 2% raise, because we have to for the union, because that's contractual. Then the insurance is gonna keep going up, and I think that's where your increase in your department is in the, when I look at their budgets, that's what I'm seeing. I don't think, you and I can disagree on this, I don't think there's a lot of fluff in the departments. I really think these departments are at bare bone. They really are, to try and make things, it's the payroll, it's the employees.
We look at, like, for instance, the highway garage, it looks like it's down 10,000. But I think it was like $30,000 worth of workers' comp come out of that, plus that time machine that didn't have to be paid for this year. I think that was 10,000. So, you know, actually, it looks like that went down 10,000. I think it went up 30.
Well, what did it go?
And your Parks and
Well, no,
Recreation looks
you're-
like it went down, looks like it went up, you know, 5,000 or 6,000, but if you look at the revenue, it actually has gone up a lot more than that if you subtract the revenue out.
If you look at this sheet that we just passed out tonight, if you look at Public Works under the 2019 budget, it was 665,546. This year it's 6,000, and that's without the workers' comp in there. So yes, it has gone down. But the workers' comp and the other thing was, you're right, the tire was 9,000. And then workers' comp was. Workers' comp was 19. So you're looking at $28,000 less. And that went up what?
See, I'm looking at the salaries, your part-time salaries in Public Works went up 49.5%.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know why.
Well,
Your overtime, your health insurance, health and dental. I think the health went down.
Well, it should go down because some of the longer, the older employees, I shouldn't say older, not necessarily older, but was under a different contract. Any replacements at a different percentage on the health insurance.
And most of them are single.
Yeah, well, that would make a difference too. But
See,
there were employees that was, what was it, 90%?
Right, that's correct, and the newer ones are 80,
Yeah.
and most of them are single. But the other thing you gotta remember with these budgets, as far as like Judy's saying, is that bare bone, these budgets are based on the current staff we have at the moment. So you get some guys that are working for you that are single and they get married, or you get some guys that are retired and not taking the benefit, and only paying the $2,400 a year in lieu of the insurance, and they get hired on, and we need to pay $20,000 a year for insurance. I mean, you gotta remember, these are bare bone already as far as your benefits are concerned. It's like with a code enforcement officer, as I mentioned in one of the other previous meetings, he's retired, doesn't take any benefits. We hire on another code enforcement officer that needs benefits if he should leave for whatever reason. The budgets are not gonna absorb a new employee with benefits.
No, you gotta cut somewhere else. I mean, we're spending way too much money. That's the problem. No matter how you spend it, a community this size can't continue to spend money at the rate we're spending it.
So where, it's like Judy said, where do we cut? What do you have for options? Where are we gonna cut first?
Oh, I cut out the stuff that people don't need and don't use without.
Tell me, listen.
Don't get into an argument. No, I understand what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
arguing with you.
No, but
Sorry.
we've looked so much at this, and I just don't know.
I think what we have to do, John is right. We have to start looking more on the revenue side than we are on the expenditure side. We do not have enough revenue coming into this town to support these budgets. And some of it is some of the, our things that we charge for.
Our user fees.
Our fees. Yeah, maybe we are gonna have to not be Mr. Nice Guy and jack it up.
That's absolutely one of the first things I've been looking at, raising revenues. And the other thing is, I have not done a survey of people's schedules, department schedules, what their staffing is, what they do, who's cross-trained, so on and so forth. I haven't done that yet. I will, but I got a few things to finish first, including this budget. But yeah, it is important to look at whether there are efficiencies within departments or efficiencies between departments. Maybe we're not looking at the right people taking care of certain projects. Again, that'll take time. And as you know, the board has already spoken about maybe consolidating 2 department heads. There may be a chance to do more consolidation. Again, I don't know yet.
Well, that's something that we could we've got time enough to take that out and end up the savings into this budget cycle.
Yeah, I wouldn't think.
The next budget cycle.
Next budget, yes.
I would hope we might be able to do a few things within the next, by the end of the first 6 months of this budget. Once I can get to some of these things, there may be ways to tidy up loose ends. And again, I don't know. I haven't looked at it yet. And not to divert the question, but you were talking about the wastewater treatment plant. As you know, we have a consent decree, and we have to meet the terms of that, which we haven't been doing. I got a tickler from a DEP person about that, so that'll be another discussion. Mr. Dave is here. Maybe something we get around to tomorrow at the selectmen's meeting. But it's new information. I just got it today.
I also got a letter today from USDA asking a lot of those same questions. We just got an email today. So we're on their radar screen.
So we have already discussed a 30% increase in water rates.
Yeah. Is that
Sewer rates, not water, sewer. But I'm questioning, and I think Ben brought it up at one time, is this something that needs to be done all in 1 year? Is this something that possibly,
Well,
a 30% increase is really
Well,
tough.
I've had some discussions with Rick, right, Rick? Daily almost. But The consent decree requires money, and 30% yes, we acknowledge that is a big increase. But anything less than 25 would probably require some sort of borrowing, whether it be internally or outside, but money has to be spent.
Well, the wastewater treatment plant has been neglected for a long time. I mean, we all have to agree on that one. We've already paid 2 substantial fines in this town because of it. Again, we're gonna have to bite another bullet and say, okay, we're gonna have to do it. But it was just a question that thought that crossed my mind.
We're paying every week because,
Well, it makes no difference whether I use the sewer or not. I mean, I feel bad for somebody who does use the sewer. They're gonna have to come up with that extra payment. It's all gonna hurt. Everybody's gonna hurt one way or another.
Yep.
Yes, please.
You gotta remember too, that if we don't raise those rates, we're cutting the town short on cash flow because we're footing their bills.
yeah, that's what I was talking about when I mentioned the sewer treatment plant, is that in reference to the fund balance.
It doesn't hurt our fund balance, it hurts our cash flow. Our fund balance is still ours, theirs is still theirs. It just hurts with the cash flow because if they're not bringing in revenue to offset their expenses, it's coming out of our checking account.
Well, I think we're talking about the same thing, but if we can't meet our expenses, then we have to borrow money. That's the
We,
call.
the town,
Yeah.
yes, if
And the
whether,
healthier the fund balance, the less have you.
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to say.
exactly, that keeps our cash flow up as well. But having them bringing in revenue enough to offset their own expenses on a monthly basis also keeps our cash flow.
And the difficulty is, you're filling backfilling a gap that's been growing for years, and Rick, ends up in the middle of all of this stuff, trying to fix roofs, this, that, and the other, including bring the rates up so he can get in conformity with what DEP has signed, what the town has signed in the past.
Yes, Judy?
I think we often can easily see what the problem is. It's finding the solution. And I thought John came up with the option list there, and maybe that we need to go at things and not, I think we notoriously talk about, we need to get this changed. Well, we'll talk about it at budget time. Then at budget time is too big to talk about it and get it really hammered out. But I kind of disagree with, I think the fee thing has to be done. We need to raise fees, but certainly on the sewer, but other fees too. But that's just a small amount. And we mentioned it the other night about we need more revenue from taxes. And one, I can't even call it a baby step, but I guess one baby step was that proposal for the 10-hour planner.
Mhm.
And is that going to be included?
It's not there now, right?
It's not there now.
And that's the problem. I mean, as we're cutting, past, the pain threshold, it's kind of hard to justify additional expenditure. And I like the idea of a planner, because I'd love to see some grants. I'd love to see some encouragement for better paying employers, not just part-time, seasonal time, no benefits kind of people. And we don't have that many. I was thinking of there's Peregrine,
Right now, it's gonna be different.
Yeah,
names.
and who?
Molly, I think they're called now.
Yeah,
Answer the name.
those are the only, what I would call, solid employers with all the nice wages and benefits. And if we had a few more of those, it'd be huge, but
I thought that we had said on Wednesday that the planner money came from
The TIF.
from some other account, not all of it, but a large part of it.
some tip, something like $9,000 from some TIF fund. I think that
Yes.
was the right phrase.
Yes, but Kathy gets paid out of that for some of the services that she already does.
Yes, she does,
Yeah.
she did some.
I sort of feel like if we're gonna chip away, like your stuff costs more money, salaries and insurance and benefits go up every single year. So the only way we can get ahead of it is with some bigger planning, like Judy just said, not raising property taxes for the people we have now, but increasing our tax base. And so in order to do that, we need to, I think, do some planning. The planning position would be money well spent. I feel like that's pretty important. I also think it's like the position that Lisa had put into Parks and Rec, which is gone now, but for programming, like if you want to increase programming revenue, someone has to do that work. So, you know, you can't make money without spending some money.
I thought we agreed to put the planner.
I thought we had agreed to put the
Did we agree?
plan in.
I didn't have a dollar amount to put in here, and I didn't see the document to know.
Well, I thought we figured it out at how many hours a week?
10 hours a week.
10 hours a week, it's
10
whatever.
hours.
I thought that's what we agreed on that it would come out of the tip.
And it was gonna be out of the tip.
Whatever the combination took to make it happen, I
Yeah.
thought we agreed to do
It
it.
was only gonna be about
And it wasn't
less
very
than
much.
4,000 or 5,000 come out of the tip, unless Kathy doesn't do any of that anymore.
Well, we can certainly put it back in. I didn't make a note of it. If I did, I put it someplace else.
It's here
It was
somewhere.
28,000, and then 9,000 was gonna come out of the tip.
That was contracted though, so that included wages and
Yeah, that included that.
benefits and everything.
No,
What?
it wasn't gonna be benefited.
That's what I'm saying, so the 28,000 is the clean cost, it's not including FICA or Medicare or anything else.
57.40 per hour.
Right.
But is that the contracted price, or are we paying that and FICA or Medicare with?
No, that's it.
That's
No,
That's it.
$28,700.
It's
20,700?
up to 10 hours per week, so if we had to do less, we could do less,
Okay.
and it'd be the same rate.
Did you say
Yep.
28,700?
If so-
28,700.
Baby steps.
That would be good, you know.
So that was my question. It is going to be you.
If that's what I'm directed.
If that's what the board wants.
At some point.
Yes, Kim?
Do I recall correctly that this part-time planner position was primarily to provide secretarial help to two of our committees, the HPC and the planning board? Because if that's the case, I don't see that they're going to have any time to bring in money from grants and things like that.
I could speak to that almost. I feel like we had a couple of businesses that this past year came before the planning board, and I don't know whatever happened to them, but I know that there was, it doesn't matter which ones, there were a couple of businesses, at least two, that came multiple times, didn't have the right paperwork, went away, and I don't think those businesses ever started. So possibly if we had somebody here who could just make sure, like, all right, you need A, B, and C, and go and take care of this, and come back and cross your T and dot your I, and you're good to go. And they could start business rather than, oh, you'll have to come back next month, oh, you've got the wrong form, you have to
And I
come back.
understand
I think
that.
that would be helpful
I
to
do
start.
understand that, but one night we had someone from the planning board stand here, a member of the planning board, who stood here and said, I don't even know what forms have to be filled out. I think that's a problem.
Yes.
I'm remembering the conversation now. One, I believe she said she would not be attending meetings, which I certainly wouldn't blame her for that. She was going to be, to a great extent, staff to both the planning board and maybe historical preservation. And that's what I remember about the duties. Now, what we're talking about now is economic development, so if you wished, we could split the tasks and say, commit so much and tell us what you're doing. Now, the Lincoln County planning people are supposed to be doing that already, but instead of putting everything onto administration and bureaucracy, because those different committees, I mean, it's impossible to keep track of all the stuff. But I mean, it would be up to the board to say how you want her to spend her time. And if you say 50/50, that's doable.
I feel like our customers as a town, right, are all the people that live here and try to do business here. And I think we do a less than stellar job in customer service. It's difficult to get answers. It's difficult to get a certificate of appropriation. It's difficult to build a porch or anything like that. And we're trying to encourage new people to move here, right, because that's going to help all of our pocketbooks. So
Yep.
somebody who could be that knowledgeable person who knows how to do all of these things would be really good for us.
So you want her to commit that time then? And then-
As it was proposed.
As was proposed.
I think so. I would just.
I agree, I've seen a lot of frustrated people coming in about, well, buy this, buy that, go back and forth and back and forth. And so if that were, if some of those obstacles were removed, I would agree with you that it would be very beneficial.
As far as some of the other economic development, I've been to different committee meetings that are going on around and paying attention to things. And there are other towns that have economic development committees, broadband committees, committees for fundraising. Waldoboro has one. I was even thinking of attending their select board meetings just to see how that's done, because, if we can't afford to lay this on the taxpayer, or we don't want to afford that, that doesn't mean we should not do it. It means that we need to find another solution to figure out how to have economic development. So I think we're really lucky that we have an active Chamber of Commerce, and we also have the Friends of Wiscasset Village, and that's really active. These things are really positive benefits for us, because maybe these people who really want to grow our town, we can work with them.
Any other comments? Judy?
So my understanding is what you're approving is what was proposed by the county, not what necessarily was in the letters from the different boards.
Yeah. Last week, Bill Maloney came up with the proposal that we're discussing now.
That's what we're discussing.
Yeah, but we're discussing what the proposal was. That's what you're going with, what Lincoln County proposed they would do,
Right.
not what was necessarily asked by, especially the Historic Preservation Commission.
Do you have it?
They, yeah, I do, and I read it, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That one had a lot of demands of time, and the others, the planning board didn't quite say that, so I'm asking if you're going with what the county said they would provide.
No, I think I was going with what Bill Maloney asked for.
Right, which is the county.
Yes. I just,
Because this was in the document. I mean, she was the planner.
Okay. I beg your pardon, that is what Bill presented, same thing. I'd forgotten which letter that was on.
So is your opinion that you don't want to go with the Lincoln County?
no, my opinion is,
This
it's a
one.
good start.
Okay, yes. Yes. I mean, Kathy even now still does work for the planning board and HPC, so.
And that comes out of it too. And that comes out of it too.
Right. So, I mean, but we are gonna need somebody, and Kim's right. I mean, there's people that come in here that wanna open up a business, and they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know, what are my priorities? And we need somebody. And I think helping the two agencies, or the three committees, is important, but I think being there for people coming into town or wanting to open a business or build a house, or whatever they want to do, that should be a high priority. That's my thoughts.
And in many cases, they thought the chamber would be the obvious
Right.
first step. And then from there, we don't want to make it difficult for them.
And it must be discouraging to try and open up a business or do something, and you get all your paperwork together and you get before the committee, and all of a sudden find out, I haven't got it all. And you gotta wait another 30 days to get before that committee. And that sets a bad tone for our town, which we should not have.
I feel like with the tax situation the way it is, we should bend over backwards to get people here and opening their businesses. Whatever we can do, make it as easy as possible and fast.
So are we in agreement as far as the 28.7?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're going to budget the full 28.7?
I thought mine was too.
Well, that was my question. Are we going to take 9 from TIP, which there isn't 9, there's only 9 in total, including Kathy.
9 minus Kathy Clark.
And I mean, I think we should be able to spend what hasn't been spent out of that the last couple of years for the same position. I mean, if it's delegated each year for that and we haven't spent it, it seems like we should be able to carry it and use it.
Ms. Jean?
I have a quick question. When we were reviewing the budget last time, we noticed that the boards and commissions has line items for the Historic Preservation Commission secretarial work, as well, I think, as the planning board. Is that comes out of the full budget, not the TIP, right?
Yes, that comes out of the full budget.
Okay.
The
so
planning
that's-
board has a secretary, which has a financial situation, the ordinance review, and historic preservation. All three of them have secretary help.
But isn't that what we were just saying, that money was coming from the TIP, but it's in fact actually budgeted in the boards and committees?
No, it is not. What's under the boards committee is coming out of the tax dollars.
And that's for the person who takes notes.
Takes the notes. It's a Jackie, basically.
Okay.
What comes out of TIP is whatever
Kathy is
does.
the administrative assistant for John, and she helps the other committees, the historic preservation, and that portion of her salary comes out of the TIP.
Okay.
Did she do that before we eliminated our last town planner? Or
No.
did she step up after we eliminated the town planner?
Once the town planner was eliminated, that position, the job had to go to somewhere, had to go somewhere so that they didn't fall through the cracks. And Kathy took it on. And it was the understanding that her salary for that portion would come out of the TIF.
And 5 hours a week, because there are general assistants for her too.
Right.
For taking care of all the general assistants.
Yes, Joe?
Yeah, I've got a question. I don't know if you can do it or not, but is there a possibility that you can, you've got a lot of positions in town, is there a possibility that some of these could be contracted out?
Give me as an example.
Cemetery.
Highway department, contracted all out.
Wow, that's a big one.
That's right. And I'm asking you that, is that, I mean, and then somebody takes that contract and they're liable for your roads and everything. So, and you've got all these employees that are collecting money, so I'll just take that one department. So that, contracted out.
It'd be worth getting an opinion or of a dollar amount, but I would probably guess it would cost more to put it out there than what we're paying, but it's a thought.
How would you know if you didn't check into it?
That's right. Bernice?
Most of the contracts are just for winter roads though, aren't they? I mean, any of the towns that I've dealt with, the contracts are just for winter maintenance. They don't do any summer maintenance.
Interesting.
Well, they usually put individual jobs out for bid.
Say again?
I mean, they usually put individual jobs out to bid, like, say, Somerville, got a lot of dirt roads. They'll contract with somebody to come in and grade them. But then they contract with somebody to plow them. And then if they needed to put in culverts, they would contract with
Everything would be contracted.
somebody else, you know, and that kind of thing.
Kim, so a few weeks back, I had asked our last town manager, like, when do we plan what we're gonna do the next year? She's like, oh, that's at budget time. So now that we're at budget time, I'm wondering if, like, can we plan for 2019-20 to tackle these problems and talk about things? Because we're not gonna solve that tonight. We're not gonna contract out the highway department right now. But could we plan to, like, okay, in July and August, we're going to see if we can, how many services we can share with the school department. And like actually meet with them and talk to them. We have you know, we've got a $12 million budget, we have 2 finance departments, we have 2 transportation departments. You know, in this little town, maybe, and they're cutting $500,000 out of their budget right now. So maybe we could plan, like, let's make a calendar for the year and we'll say, all right, this is the time, we're gonna do these meetings and we're gonna get it together so that when we come back next March, we've got our ducks in a row and we're gonna be like, all right, well, we're gonna combine these departments, I'm just wondering, do we can't plan that?
Judy, but that's exactly what I was talking about. Now is not the time.
Right.
But to set it to go, you guys can do that.
And I think you're right, and I think what we need to do is, once the budget process is completed, then as a board and with the town manager, start setting goals and really looking at our finances and where this town is going.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it's always kick the can down the road. We're gonna get to that, we're gonna get to that.
Couldn't it be also part of this comprehensive plan review? Like, that can be part of our plan, like to become more financially and economically stable. But we can start right now, like on the ground, you know, what are we gonna do? But I don't wanna just not do it. I feel like every time we come to a select board meeting, we have these long agendas and there's public interest questions and concerns, but we don't really plan. It would be cool if we could just make a plan and then actually do plan.
We will discuss it after the budget.
Okay.
We do work on it, and we put a lot of time into seeing
Yes.
whether we wanted to keep the ambulance last year, and the townspeople said, keep it. That is a big expense that we've got to show that it's gonna have, you know, they don't come in with the revenues they say they're going to, and they're not going to. You know, there are some things we have to accept that we can't make back.
And that was good. I'm not saying that wasn't good, but we need to do more across the board because every year we come in, it's the same thing because stuff costs more money every year. Like energy costs more, salaries cost more, benefits cost more, and that's not going to change. And county tax is going to go up. So yeah, more like the EMS thing, but like really, I even feel like the EMS thing, like we had to do, it was kind of put on us, but I don't feel like we proactively did that. I feel like we reacted to some demands, but it wasn't like we sat down and thought like, all right, what can we do about energy? Like we're spending so much money on oil. Oil's kind of yesterday's news. What can we do about that? It costs more every year. How can we fix that? You know what I mean? Like those types of
No, I'm not following you
Well,
down.
I've had several conversations with John, and he's got some good ideas, so let's get the budget done, and then we can turn it over to John, and he can, you know, hopefully steer us in the right direction.
And thank you for pointing out my lack of proofing, because combining departments should have been on that list. But we talked a bit about maybe sharing 2 departments with one department head sometimes.
And maybe we could share lawnmowers.
Well, actually,
We got a lot of lawnmowers in this budget.
well, what I'd overlooked, and
Depends on where they're for.
Bernice reminded me of the cemetery.
Grass.
That comes out of the cemetery reserve fund, so it doesn't take the taxpayer.
Why can't, if we're gonna combine those departments, why can't we do that now?
Because as the chair points out, go through the budget first.
Well,
I'm not
we can
being
calculate the savings into the budget for next year.
I would,
And we'd have all of April, May, and June to implement it.
I think that is going to take some thinking and some discussion, because you've got 2 supervisors right now, and you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do to make one more responsible than the other. You see where I'm going, and I think we have to do a lot of planning on this one.
well, the other is, you look at the equipment, you look at the schedules, and the peaks and valleys, we know storms, that's all road crew. Not as much impact on the transfer
It's not like
station.
it ain't been done before.
No, I know that.
I know it's been done before, and I'm the one that suggested it. I thought that would be a good idea, but I think we need to really think about it and plan it.
Well, I'm all in favor of it. So,
I think we're all in favor of it. It's just how to accomplish what we want.
But I would think that we could cut some out of the budget and accomplish that by the end of the year or whatever.
I would think that fall, a few months out, is a realistic time frame to come to a decision on that, whether to combine, how to combine. A few months. I haven't, you won't believe it, well, maybe you will, but I haven't been up to the transfer station yet. I saw it years ago.
It's a dump. But I mean, and good. So let's say it would be the end of the year, that's really gives us a long time to do the planning. We could cut something out of the budget now.
In anticipation.
Yes, that we will have those savings come at least the last half of the year.
Well,
I would think we could cut out at least 30,000, and that takes care of the new plan we're putting in. Well, I mean, if we want to save money, now is the time to do it. Kick it down the road, which is what people say.
But we'd also, at the same time as we're saving, we're also looking for revenues. And all the departments that have revenues, whether they be fees, or ambulance, or rec center, whatever it may be, we do that at the same time. So, like I said, on my list, just kind of look at everything. It's like Halloween, you knock on all the doors in one, and somebody might open them up. So that's what I'm sort of talking about. Just
Okay.
try them all.
Are we all set with the budget that's proposed? I'm not talking the revenue, just this,
Well, we weren't through all the lines yet, were we?
well, we keep nickel and diming and not taking it.
Yeah, but I think we're at the nickel and dime point, and probably we're past the point that we should have been.
And I just want, earlier you said that Parks and Rec had gone up 5,000 or 6,000, but if you look at the latest version, it's actually down. It's down quite a bit. It's at, did you see that $790,000? Even if you add the workers' comp, I think it's still down, right?
Well, I was using the first column, 815.
Oh, yeah, no, we have a new the second column.
It's 821, well, 821 is more than 815.
But that's been
It's
revised.
a 790.
You see,
It's 790. Look one column over. I just don't want it out there that Parks and Rec is up, because Parks and Rec is very down. Thank you.
the big changes between the last meeting and this meeting are shown in that almost empty column. And you see Parks and Rec came up with a 31,525 reduction, Police Department 27,000, and Transfer Station 15,000. But what I see is we're at the point where we can't go any lower on funding these operations. So now we have to figure out how to bring it back to a more comfortable, non-emergency situation. Take care of the taxpayers, looking for what revenue we can find. Because everybody's trying to do that at the same time, because there aren't too many towns, maybe Portland, there aren't too many towns that have particularly good demographic situation or wages. So, we have to find more ways of doing how we do things at hopefully similar or lower price, and then we've got to recover some of the revenues we've lost over the last few years for all sorts of reasons, and work on that. So, as I said, it's trying to start it all at the same time. It's not going to happen in a month or two. Might start seeing something in 3 months or 4 months, but you can't expect everything to hit the marks at such short notice.
Yes, Bob.
Is the full-time person, the new full-time person, still in the ambulance budget?
I don't think so.
It's not, isn't
It looks like it's flat now.
it? Okay.
But it's still included in.
It's still included in there. I cut some other areas and trying to keep that, but yes.
And going back to that particular person, you had stated it would stop a lot of the overtime.
Yes.
Plus the fact, having this person there, we could generate more revenue. Is that correct?
We could do more transfers if we had more stable staff.
And transport's where the money is.
Judy, we don't have overtime there. We have supervisor, and we have
Well,
part-time
maybe
people. There's
overtime
not
was wrong.
supposed to be
It was
overtime.
unable to do a shift, is that correct?
Right, so a lot of the overtime, that line that you see there, is still budgeted hours. So we budget 336 hours a week. We're still, by and large, paid 336 hours a week. It's not extra time, it's just lopsided time. So the wage part of that, the straight time part of that is already accounted for in my wages and salaries budget. So the overtime, and Bernice can correct me if I'm wrong, the overtime is kind of inflated. It's not really all, it's not extra hours, it's not.
It's not more hours being covered, it's a person who's already worked 40 hours picking up those extra shifts.
Because you
And we're
don't,
getting paid
Because we
because we
don't
just-
have enough people, it's like he said to me for this month. He's taken everybody that is per diem employee and submitted their hours to him. He's got 15 slots empty, who's he gonna fill them with? He's gonna fill them with this floater that he wants, or he's gonna take somebody who's already got 40 hours put in there and give them overtime.
So it is overtime.
It's overtime by virtue
Is it
that
time
it's a
and a half?
person that's already worked 40 hours.
Is it
It is
time
a
and a
time and a
half?
half, yes.
Okay.
But as he's saying, he's got 336 hours in a week to cover. And he's either gonna cover it by 10 people at 36 hours, or he's gonna cover it at 8 people at more than that.
And then it's,
And then it's a time and a half.
And that's a time and a half. So it's not like Public Works where they come in for a storm and they actually work 20 extra hours. So if you take that full-time person out of that budget, part of that wage for that full-time person has to be kicked back up into my wages and salary budget, because that's where we took it from.
any more questions?
Dennis does have some information on, historically what the transports were, and we've dropped down to almost nothing. And of course, once people get out of the habit of calling you, you have to spend some time building it up. And I know that one of the issues in your department and also the police department is, a great reliance on stable workforce. You have to know who will come in and who you want to come in. And this is an effort to provide the stability and effectiveness and revenue for that department. So anyway, that's my final piece of information.
Any more thoughts or questions? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of things that I noted along the way here. Excuse me. I work for both these departments, police and EMS here in town. And to see the amount of businesses that are leaving here, I know that if I was going to open a business of 8 to 10 people, when I come into town, I want to see a police department, an EMS department, a fire department, a stable environment. And having worked for both of them, we could get other towns. We could serve other towns with our EMS service here. And having that force for the new director to be able to go to these towns and say, this is what we'd like to be able to offer you with a good, stable backing, that we have employees to do it. We could definitely make the money all around for public safety here, for sure.
And Woolwich is a good example of that right now, because they're actually looking to start their own ambulance service, because Northeast, who's serving it now, is not going to do them after July. So they have to do their own service, so they have to contract it out.
Because I think we reached out to Woolwich a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and they weren't willing to leave Northeast, I think that's what they
At that time they were, but now Northeast has said, we're just not interested in doing it anymore. But with the situation that we're in right now, I wouldn't dare to go and say, yeah, yes, we can provide you with a great service, because we just don't have the stability in our workforce yet. We're getting there, but we're just not there.
Right. Okay. Yes, Bernice?
Just to add to that, when I was on the other side of the world doing auditing, the town of Howland has built up their ambulance service, which is generating a lot of revenue for the town to help offset not only its costs, but the overall town's costs, and it's mostly through the transports.
When I worked for the city of Belfast, they made money on their points because they did so many transfers.
And I
And I'm not saying that that can happen here,
Mm.
but there's just opportunities there if we can stabilize this.
Anything else from the board and the budget committee? Yes, Kim?
So I'm gonna bring it up again. I don't know if it's still in here, but there's $45,000 in fences for two.
That comes out of the cemetery.
So that doesn't matter.
That does not affect the
And then what
tax bill.
about the selectmen line? We never talked about that, but, you know, when I ran for this job, I thought it was a volunteer job, and I was very surprised to get it's almost $200 a month where we get to do this volunteer job.
That much?
Yeah, it's like
It's 200 minus 10%, yeah.
Well, now we know where all our money's going.
So I just thought, like, if we, you know, I would volunteer to do this job. We've got volunteers who put a lot of time and effort into our town. We're cutting here, we're cutting there. You know, why don't we talk about that? And also printing. If we're spending $3,000 a year to print these materials, we could do this all electronically. We could buy 5 Chromebooks for $200 a piece, and for anyone who didn't have their own Chromebook.
That's
And we
to
don't have to
assume
do
that
this.
everyone wants to do it on a computer.
Well, that could be a requirement of the job to save money for the taxpayers. I just think it's a little bit outrageous to be like, oh, well, I'm not gonna go online, so everybody pony up $3,000 for my paper, not to mention the trees. Just
Yes.
saying, I think we should wipe that line out.
You have to remember that not everybody has a computer. There is no law
So-
that says that we have to have
5
computers.
Chromebooks at $250 a piece would be less, and they would last for years. A Chromebook is a computer that you could have.
Thank
It's
But
a
there's
little
people
laptop.
in this town that are not computer savvy.
But these people can be.
That doesn't, hey, I'm not gonna be here a year and 3 months.
I'm just saying that
I'm
the
not gonna be here.
$3,000 for printing is for our, I've got a stack of paper, I've got reams of paper at home from, I haven't even been online on this job for a year yet, because those packets, they're like 60 to 90 pages, and we get a folder. I have all this paper and all these folders. It just is unnecessary because it's online.
Well, I do recycle. I bring the folders down here. I bring down the fingering binders because I have no need for them. My son brought 2 big boxes down here just a couple weeks ago
Well,
because I don't need it. Yes, Judy?
I just want to listen and hear more, because you know how long it took me to get double-sided printing?
I remember that.
It's unnecessary. We could do the whole thing on our phones. We don't need all this paper, and it costs money, and we're cutting here, and we're cutting there. We talked for 25 minutes about a $6,000 or $8,000 increase in animal control, and meanwhile, we're all collecting $200 a month for a volunteer position.
Well, I've never known the selectman job being a volunteer. I've never known that. I knew it years ago they made more than $200 a month.
Well, years ago, you had a big thing in town that paid all the bills, and we don't have that anymore, so if we're gonna tighten our belts, I mean, this town is chock full of volunteers. There are loads of people who would do this. I did it. I was shocked when I got my
You can't even get them
say,
to run for the office. You think you're
well,
gonna get them to
I
volunteer?
think they might run for the office if they thought they had a shot of winning. You know, we have the same people run over and
Kim,
over.
I'm not gonna sit here and argue with it. Everybody has a shot to win.
All right.
All you gotta do is go take out your papers, get it 25
I'm just
signatures and
saying,
get on
I
the
think we
ballot.
should eliminate the selectmen fees.
You and Donald Trump.
Bernice, you had something you
Well,
wanted
just to note that the $3,000 cost that's in your budget is to print the town report. We can't get away with that.
All right, so not that.
So how are we set with this budget? Are we gonna go with this budget? Yes, Bob?
Going up to community organizations, did we get a request from the library or just pushed last year's over?
I don't
I
remember.
haven't received
I don't remember
anything in
seeing
writing.
it.
If we haven't seen it, then usually would have it out here by now.
Well, the reason I asked was because there was a gentleman that passed away and left a significant estate, and we was told that after that had been liquidated and invested, that their endowment would do a lot more than they had in the past.
Catherine?
I know who you're talking about, and he did leave How much, I don't know. But the majority of the money is for the artwork, the paintings and all of that stuff that is on the second floor of the library. And I don't know how much of the endowment that he left actually goes to upkeep, books or whatever. Do you know off the
Well,
top
I
of your
know
head?
that were able to use some of that monies for like
The
the
roof.
roof because it's over
The
the
artwork, it was that,
the
you
artwork.
know.
But they can't use it for the payroll or,
But didn't we, a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were on the board at that time, Judy, we went through to find out exactly about the endowment, and they can only take a percentage, just like we can only take a percentage of our
it's the
investment.
very same percentage. too.
Yes, so that's why, you know, they come to the town. But I'm surprised we have not gotten anything formally from the library.
Well, I was on the budget committee, I think, perhaps at that time, and Fred Quigley, who has some financial background, he looked at that and determined what that percentage would be. I don't know that anyone has done that since.
Well, what it is 4.5.
Yes, I believe it's 4.5.
Just like your people advised you, their people advised them, their financial.
Yeah, because we had them here, I think, 2 years ago.
But it did go down
Yes, it
last
did.
year.
Yes, it did.
The request went down.
But again, I'm kind of surprised that we haven't received a formal.
Well, I expected it to continue to go down as that money was brought online.
But just because they asked for $56,000 doesn't mean you have to give it to them.
Well, no, but I would have liked to look at the request if there is none.
The board of trustees,
That's surprising because usually they've had it out by now.
I'll find out.
Because we're not early in our budget to that point that we would not have it. Because have we heard from the pantries? Do we have a request from them?
I don't
I
know
haven't seen any requests, when Kathy has them, I don't know.
what you generally would see them as.
I don't know, because this is my first.
So we haven't received anything for community organizations? We just put the money in there thinking
I
that
was
they're
told
going
we
to?
always put in the ones we had the year before.
We did that last year, but the year before that, we had a whole bunch, and then when we only funded some of the money.
The year before, I don't think we had hardly any. And then last year, you had more.
They keep creeping back.
So what's the verdict, guys? What are we gonna do here?
I'll move well, we can't vote tonight anyway.
No, we can't, but do you want to go with the 1.6%?
Plus the,
Plus the
Plus-
28.7?
This is a question.
Yes, sir.
Does this, one of your things was raising the user fees? Does the new budget have any user fee increases for any of? Okay, and was the plan to raise any of them in the near future?
well, just getting to the point where, you know, if we stretch the taxpayers like we have, what's the next thing? You raise user fees, and then you look around for grants, and
Yeah.
look for efficiencies, all of the above. And user fees are, to me, seem pretty obvious because most of them haven't been touched in quite a
Yeah,
while.
several years.
So that's low-hanging fruit, I'd say, I hope. I don't know how much time has to pass before, to notify people, have hearings, have an approval of the board, but I would hope that'd be something could be initiated pretty quickly.
I would like to see John maybe contact the library trustees and find out if they are going to put anything in, and how much. I mean, I don't want to give them $50-some thousand if they don't want $50-some thousand.
Okay, I'll check that in the morning.
You know, and the pantries, I think we've always given them the $1,500 or $1,000. I think we've always done that. But I think the library, we need to
I
check.
don't think they ought to ask, though.
Yeah, we could do all of them between now and Wednesday. Give you something to do.
Take a nap.
He sits in there doing nothing.
Yes, Bob.
I said, we could just sit there doing nothing all day.
I agreed with you, in our last meeting there, that a lot of this stuff that goes up, and I'm gonna vote for it. I'm not gonna vote for some of this stuff. But we don't have the whole picture here until we've talked about what we're gonna do with the money from the reserve account.
That's correct, because we haven't discussed capital at this point in time either. And if you're gonna have to take $300,000 out to lower the taxes, you're not gonna have anything for capital improvement.
Well, I think that's part of the picture, you know.
Right. As much as I said last week, I really don't wanna have to do it. I also don't wanna raise the taxes 7%. And hopefully within the next year, with, you know, help from John and getting our financial picture better and a little bit better, we won't have to continue taking that kind of money.
So my suggestion might be that if the board is happy with this part of the budget, just have reach a consent, declare you've reached a consensus, you can vote. And with the addition of the money for the part-time planner and checking with the library trustees and community organizations, we can report back to you on Wednesday and
vote.
And then that bit's done.
Yeah.
But just to know you're making progress, because we're flogging the proverbial dead horse at this point, that we're looking at the same numbers, and running through it again. And we really haven't, apart from what the three departments came up with in the last few days, we really haven't done much except add the planner position. So that'd be my take on it.
So can we have a consensus of the board to go with this budget?
Are we gonna talk about revenues tonight, or?
I don't think we can talk about revenues tonight, how would
Reserves, I mean, excuse me.
I
reserves.
don't think we have a good picture yet for the reserves. I mean, it's going to get to the point we're gonna have to decide on whether to take money from the reserve and how much. I just stated that if we take 300,000, if we don't touch the fund balance, if we don't touch the fund balance at all, and end up taking 300,000 out of reserve, then to bring it down to a 2.12% increase,
Be a little bit more than that.
a little bit more than that, that means no capital. We would have nothing for capital, because we have stuff already committed.
Whoa, I thought you said we had 500,000.
But we do, but you've got
We've got to commit to a few
two,
things, yes.
we've got two loans that are committed,
Right.
and then the 300,000 if you're talking there.
When do you normally commit the taxes?
September.
September.
Yeah. Yeah, in September, because the bills go out the 1st of September or October.
Consensus at this point. So it is.
Well, I'm not interested in the budget that has more full-time people in it.
Catherine?
I think at the point we're at now, we just have to keep going,
That's
but
what we've got to
I'm
spend.
not saying I'm gonna vote for everything we've done tonight or whatever, but we've still got Wednesday. And you said, like you said, we haven't even looked at capital and
Right.
any of that, so. And that's gonna, I think after this, maybe?
I
don't know.
think so. You know, I say go with this for right now, and, you know, right now.
Yeah, that's, I feel this, I agree.
And as the board
Yeah,
votes
yeah.
on it, you'll get your determination, those are in favor or those are against.
So that would be after the next budget meeting, during the next budget meeting? Because we have to get it done by the night.
Well, we're gonna vote Wednesday.
Oh, for sure, okay. And we do the capital,
Wednesday's gonna-
the capital numbers.
Well, I mean, if you're taking this kind of money out of there, there's no way you can have any capital anyway.
Right.
138,000.
I don't see how we
That's what we
can.
would have to use.
If we got 508,000, and we take out the 300,000, and we take out roughly 70 something for those two loans, if I remember correctly, it's about 138.
She doesn't want to hear it, but I would, I would use a 300 figure, but I would probably take 200,000 from reserves, probably 50,000 from the general fund, and just through the revenue, the valuation of the town increasing, I think we could count on at least another 50,000 there, so we could get 300,000 that way.
Are you going to? No?
You could do the math. I mean, Ellery was here today. I know you were talking to him. I don't think he gave you any idea about what's shifted in our valuations.
Not a lot, but I know there's been, we sent out those homestead exemption applications, and we've had a lot of people submit those in, which is going to help individuals, but it's not going to help the town, because we only get reimbursed for 62.5% of those.
See, I don't know about taking out a fund balance. I have a problem taking out a
I
fund
really
balance.
don't, if you're gonna take out a fund balance, we might as well abolish that fund balance policy.
Maybe it was a bad policy to begin with.
It's not a bad policy to begin with.
So anyway,
How much do we have in our sinking fund, reserve accounts altogether?
Oh, a few million.
Oh, I know, how much?
I don't remember
I think it's
exactly.
14 million, somewhere in there?
I think it was like 13 million.
Yeah, it was
13
between
million,
11 and
almost
15.
14 million. I think we have.
Trouble is though, is that's not at our disposal to use for anything. It's not like I can go and borrow $1 million out of there to keep us afloat for a little while, and then put it back when our cash comes in. Our other choice is to have.
That wasn't where I was going with it. I would just simply take X amount of dollars out if you needed.
Out of what?
Out of the reserves. I would go to the townspeople and ask for the authority to take it out, as we have done ever since Maine Yankee closed. Basically, the discussions we're having here tonight and all the hand-wringing, we've been doing it now for 20 years.
But we can't afford to take $1 million out every year. That's the whole thing.
Well, I wasn't talking $1 million.
But I mean, if you're talking about taking $300,000 or $400,000 off to put on the taxes, then that leaves you no money for capital. And if you want to be able to do capital, then that means we have to take more money out of the reserve. And before we know it, we're not going to have that money. Kim?
Do we have the capital list?
yeah, we do.
We haven't
I haven't looked at it yet, so.
We haven't seen it
I
yet.
feel like without having that capital list in front of us and discussing it.
It was in here last time I gave you. I don't think I have it here now.
Are we talking about that now? I just gotta make this out.
Where was it?
I can go print it off real quick, but I
No,
don't
it's
know.
Oh, it's in this book.
It's in this book. Hey,
Oh, there it is.
Mine's
No, it's right there with that.
Mine's empty for some reason.
this one changed at all for me from March, the end of March. I just looked at the sheet.
For capital,
Yeah.
there weren't many items added. Yes, that's the one. 327, I haven't had any other requests come in, Catherine.
And so the request here is 635,000.
And some of them only have $1 in there as placeholders because they don't have exact dollars.
Well, right now
And
you
these
got,
two we have to
you
pay.
got a total of $634,000 in your capital.
And these
Yeah.
two with the check mark we have to pay?
Correct.
Are they the only ones we have to pay?
Yes.
So we have 80,000 that we have to pay.
Right.
So because 300,000, and that would leave us 200, and then we have 80, that would give us 120,000 roughly for capital.
Do you have that sheet?
Yeah, we got
What
327.
page is it?
It's,
It was handed out after.
No
Mine
page
says
numbers.
page one.
Page one, oh, capital.
All right, there it is.
That 100-some-odd thousand won't even pay 10 feet on the highway. And they want $200,000 for our. That's why I'm saying, you take it, you're not gonna have any money to do anything. That's the whole problem. I know,
Well, okay, but we have been doing that for 20 years, and the money is still there, because we have been doing it for years.
we have, but you know, we got to get to a point where we stop doing it, or at least do something to get ourselves into a situation where, and I don't know the answer, Ben. I don't know the answer. But
You put in the real numbers and have all the articles turned down. Or many of them.
I know, I thought it was the same line too.
the problem is, the townspeople, they want the ambulance, they want the fire department, they want all this stuff. That means they have to pay for it. And you put it out there and they vote yes, then we have to do it.
That's true, but I'm just, I mean, it just wouldn't bother me to take an extra 100 or 200 out of reserves to help, above and beyond the numbers that she's showing now, to help keep taxes down, or the pave highway, or if we want to spend it. I mean, I remember when Jeff was here, he was telling us when he first joined that committee, just 5 or 6 years ago, there was 10 million in it. Now we're what, up to 13 or 14.
I think it's close to 14 million we got in there. And we took $1 million out.
So that tells me that we're doing a pretty good job. And that some of that money, just a little of it, would help the town when the town needs some help. Which is why it was put there to begin with. Wasn't it?
It was. It was there for rainy day.
No.
It's not right, it's thunderstorm
It's
right now.
not. It's gonna be next year.
All of those reserves, which is what that's accumulation of, were for when you need to boil from the roof.
But that did the
I
compromise.
mean, the policy system makes sense for communities that don't have $12, $13 million in the bank, and most of them don't. Right?
No, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because the fund balance is for operations of the town. This money that's sitting over there is not meant to be used for operating the town unless I'm wrong. What's it for? For capital.
No, that money was not put in there for capital. That is not.
It was put in there for rainy day, I know. Yes.
Is it raining?
It's pouring out.
Yeah, they all see it.
It is, and I just want to sprinkle a little money down the line.
We sprinkled a lot last year.
It's still raining.
Looking at the manager's list, could we have the challenges, I don't know, I doubt that we're gonna actually solve it within a week.
I don't think so.
Alright, could it be the focus of the comprehensive plan to help figure out what the town wants to do for the future and focus on some of these things?
That's one of the things, something like fiscal capacity is a section
Yeah.
within the economic, been a good place to start. The other is the vision.
Yeah.
And just like, for me, let's talk about numbers.
Okay, so is that the plan, kind of just?
Could do, I won't have it by Wednesday.
Oh, I know, I know it won't be for next week, but that's, this is trying to, we don't want to be in the same exact process next year where we need to find $500,000.
It's going to happen every year.
It has, but.
Well, until we like get rid of things, it's going to continue to happen. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Or increase other things.
Well, okay, but that doesn't happen very often.
Okay,
We're
okay.
working on make a change.
Oh, Corey? I'm sorry.
Nope.
Jason? I'm so sorry.
Do we have a municipal use for the airport? It's funded through the town, correct?
That's correct.
Do we have a municipal use for the airport? Was that a luxury that we support?
Well, it's a
that the
luxury we
communities have?
can't afford to get rid of.
And, well, that's the thing, so, but we're not making, for what we're spending, we're not making money back on the airport, correct?
We make some revenue on it, but we cannot afford to get rid of it.
It's
So
it's
as part,
subsidized.
as part of the plan that you guys are looking at hiring, is part of their job going to be, what can we bring to the airport to make more money? Like
I should hope
flying
that would be
lessons,
part of the
or
comprehensive plan,
is
yes.
that, so that would be part of the plan?
I would hope so.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Kim?
I not me.
Not you.
Number three.
The notion, when Ben says this is gonna happen every year, the notion that this is going to happen every year, it will if you continue to allow it to happen every year. It seems to me that correct me if I'm wrong, but does everything automatically have to go to a vote? No, wait, spending, yes, my point here is it not a decision that the board can make to decide this is a way to give the town this service at a better cost?
As far as my thinking, and I've been a selectman for 10 years, we have never just done that. We've always taken everything to the town because it's their money.
I appreciate that, but I don't feel that I feel that you should be the steward of their money. That's what they are electing you to do, all of you. I'm just saying, you know, I mean, everybody's always arguing in this town that, oh, people didn't know what they were voting for. So
I think that statement is wrong. I think everybody who votes knows what they're voting for. They know exactly.
A lot
what
of
they're
people,
voting.
once people vote, then everybody likes to say they didn't, is what I'm saying. That's where we find ourselves all the time. So I don't need to be argumentative. I just feel that to answer, to discuss and come to some conclusions on that list that the manager put together, I think that's critical. And I don't know that that's all going to come about by putting it to a vote outside of this room.
Thank you. Okay, I have two of them right here.
I just a question about, one of the options was liquidating our assets.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, do you have, what are
Well,
those
we've
assets?
got the Scout Hall.
Okay.
It's one, I don't know what else we've got, but could be anything from surplus machinery, surplus property, surplus furniture. I mean, if that's the best way of spending our money, then we'll continue to do it that way. It's not the best way, take the can, do something else with it. But I mean, when you're in financial distress,
Right.
you sell the furniture.
Just wondering if there's a way that you can get an estimate on how much, if you sold that property, you would then put it back into.
Scout Hall is easy enough. We know what that is. I don't know where the rest of the stuff is. I know that Mr. Blagden wouldn't mind saying goodbye to Scout Hall.
Well, I did ask that we find out if it's being used and to what level
Yes.
before we went any further with that.
Yes.
That's a vague answer, but that's all I have.
Okay.
I'm not going to make up stories.
Judy?
I didn't, but I will.
I thought I saw your hand.
I was pleasantly surprised with this. I thought it did, and we haven't talked about it, but the morale of the staff was mentioned, and getting new people to come here, and it's all just intertwined, and we need that vision and that.
I was updating this in the afternoon, some of the things I heard.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for noticing.
Okay, Ben, do you have anything else?
Kim still,
No, I'm all set.
no, you're not bad.
Or it was.
I was thinking, we had said last year at candidates night, we wanted to have a community discussion on the schools. There's so much going on, we didn't get around to it. But I'm told that there are 24 seniors graduating. Something's not right there. That's a lot of money.
But if I'm not mistaken, we have asked the school department to meet with us, and we haven't gotten any response back
Let's try again.
several times.
I did meet with the superintendent briefly, and she handed me the audit, which was great, audit item number 1, and said she was reviewing operations, kind of like what we're talking about. And that's where it is. I can ask for a follow-up meeting.
This is the first superintendent that I've seen here who is actually looking at numbers and eliminating positions. And she questioned why we haven't been doing this for years. She said every time someone retired or resigned, the school department went ahead and replaced that person, and our enrollment goes down every year. So she's actually looking at EPS numbers and making big changes, big cuts.
Well, I know that when we came out of RSU 12, I was on the board at that time, and there were meetings held with the superintendent. We didn't have a superintendent. We had an interim superintendent at that time. Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, co-chair of the Board of Selectmen, chairman of the school board, and the vice chair. We all met to discuss, where do we go from here? What do we do? And the select board at that time had thought that it would be beneficial to the town because we wanted to have one town, our own local control, whatever you want to call it. And it was suggested that the highway department go back to plowing the schools like they did years ago. It was suggested to have, maybe if we even had to hire a person here at the town office, to have everything come through the town office instead of having two separate identities. And the board at that time was not reciprocal to the information, and they did not want to do that. And that is why you have separate locations.
But maybe we could have those conversations again. All of the people are different.
I think it would be good. I think years ago, I can remember when my kids were in school, that the highway department always did schools. And they opened them up and made sure they were ready. And there's no reason why they couldn't do it now. There's no reason why we couldn't hire another person down here whether you work for the school department or the highway department, your check all says Town of Wiscasset, so what difference does it make? I mean, that's my viewpoint.
You
Well,
get a real check.
that's why I want to plan a plan.
You get a
so we
real
can have these
check?
conversations.
I get this thing in the mail that says it's supposed to be a check.
But just to clarify, you're talking the financial office?
Yes.
Yeah, not just everything combined, but
Yeah.
the.
But also-
And I am glad that somebody is starting to look at the teacher-pupil ratio, because that has been one of my complaints for I don't know how many years, the fact that I've noticed that the head count doesn't go down in teachers, but it goes down in students.
It is this year.
And hopefully, we'll get that resolved.
But I have to speak up because it has gone down. I mean, ever since Maine Yankee closed, things started going down as far as the amount of staff and faculty. So it has, not to the extent that she really is looking at it, and I understand.
There is a big change.
Yeah, and they're doing their homework, and but it did happen, not as much as maybe it should have, but it has happened over the years.
That's good. Okay, so
What are we gonna do with the capital?
This is the information that Payson sent us regarding what was recommended to take out of the capital this year.
That's just the straight percentage. right?
how can we discuss capital unless you decide how much you want to take out of the reserve?
I would also want to hear from the highway person on the importance of the plowing at Cushman Point. I have no idea.
The paving.
That's what I meant, the paving.
Well, I do know that I think if I'm correct, at one point they tried to have some type of schedule, if you want to call it, to do certain roads every year to keep up with our roads. Now, whether Cushman Point is in dire need of it, I don't know. But I know last year when they did the one out there by the church, Beech Nut Hill, that one was really bad and needed it. I don't know, I don't go that direction, so.
Judith?
Yes.
It might be nice to have a little historical knowledge here, but we took that road over not too long ago, and I thought that the residents were gonna pave that before the town took it over.
They did.
And it needs it again? I'd make them do it again. It looks like it must have been a pretty shoddy job.
I don't know, it's been almost it's been over 10 years, maybe 15 years.
It doesn't seem like it should
I
be.
know, but
Doesn't it have to be done to specs of what the
Yeah,
town?
they did, that was the deal, they had to,
Yeah, but I don't know who's
the
looking at it, if
engineer,
anybody.
supposedly, I don't know.
So what do you want to do, Ben? Or do you want to talk about capital?
Well, does it make sense to go through every one of these and hear every presentation if we don't have the money?
No.
No, it doesn't. I mean, we have so much money that definitely has to come out of this 518,000. Was it 70-some thousand?
Those bills. Okay.
Page one.
Okay. Oh,
It's like $63,000 that needs to be held
How
up. 63,000 for those two debt payments.
So you have to have 62,000 out of this. And let's say you add the 200,000 for paving. So if you took that 263, you're still not gonna have $300,000.
well, I still believe we will pick up a little through the town's valuation increase. Not a huge amount, but noticeable.
So I guess the first question would be, are you thinking the max draw, which is shown as 508?
I guess that's what he's
Are you saying basically the max draw, which is 4.5%, is 518,000? You're saying
That's what
basically-
Mason says.
Minus
So you're saying basically that's,
8, 7.
you want to use that for various legitimate and nefarious purposes? In other words, what has to come out, which will leave you with something like 420, close enough. And then you find out all these things. Oh, plus the asks. Yeah, are optional.
What?
Plus the other requests on the capital side.
Well, they're all optional.
Except the ones that, there's some.
Well, there's two, okay. I wouldn't listen to
There's the
you.
63,000 that has to go.
So that comes out to what? 456? Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
65? I think I have it at 65,000. That we would be over counting the planner position. And then the road and the 63,000. And then putting 300,000 in offset taxes.
Plan's not gonna come out of this.
But,
The plan's not gonna come out of this.
no, but that increases the budget by
Oh, yes,
19,000
yes.
from this. So you need to take out 319,700.
Yeah, if that was 250, that one, would it be halfway?
Somewhere, yes, but you remember we gotta have this one too.
Would it be under 3?
Oh, I would think, yes.
So you could probably put that on a single sheet next meeting, start off with this off, not off, but
Just the-
63, 73, and then,
Not even, yeah.
highlight the other things that are optional. And let the board decide, unless they want to maintain or reduce taxes.
300K.
Since you're gonna redo it.
Yes,
I was wondering,
Just throw us a third one,
maybe you
250.
could call the superintendent and ask her for her latest budget figure, because it's, the last one I saw last week she presented was 599, or 59999. It was like under, it was 40-something thousand less than what's in our schedule.
Yep, thank you.
As long as we're looking at every 40 grand.
We could really only take two.
Ben, I can see you're thinking
No,
about something.
35.
You're all set?
We'd only have 235.
Yeah.
No, stop the
Well, as far as the taxes, I think that's gonna come out all right. We're hovering somewhere in 3%. We just haven't figured out what we're gonna do with the capital.
And what you're gonna use out of the reserve.
Well, I asked her to come up with 250,000, see what that.
250 from the reserve to put towards taxes.
Yeah, just add a third line there, so.
And I'll go back and see if there was a good record keeping of the tip. So I don't know how many years we did or did not use the $9,000 for economic development. I know what wasn't used this year, I know what wasn't used last year, or I will know that, so that I would think that we could use that towards the planner. So I'm thinking like 20,000 is what we'd have to use for the planner, instead of the 28,700.
So the economic development argument would be that we're moving obstacles to businesses who want to move into town. Because open code enforcement wouldn't cut it straight pace. So, facilitating, putting together a package into town, sort of thing. All right.
And you and I went through the
Yes, we did.
capital here,
We did.
and we estimated, what, 116,000 that was gonna have to be returned?
Oh, it's closer to 150.
Is it 150?
I think that's what we came up with.
Okay. Is there, and I know the way they do the warrant, it's for these particular items. That's how the warrant's always been done. Like, for example, the municipal building electric. We haven't done it, even though they've approved it. We've got $37,000 in there. Is that correct? And we have the fire and EMS primo vents for the 58,000 that we haven't spent. So that money would have to go back into the reserve.
Well, these jobs haven't been done, right?
That's correct.
Well, yes and no. With the primo events, from what I understand, we're talking with TJ, and I went back in the town meeting articles, is that we voted to put the primo events in, and then come to find out there wasn't headroom enough to put those kind of events in. So then the next year, instead of just using that money for exhaust fans, we raised, or we pulled more money out of the reserve for the exhaust fans. So yes, the exhaust fans have been put in for $30,818, but we pulled over 30,000 plus 51,000. So there's 58,182 that really should go back to the reserve.
Right. And that electric work is yet to be done?
For the municipal building,
Yeah.
you're talking, some of it has been done, but I don't know, again, I can't find all of the good records to tell you for sure. I mean, we spent $2,700 in last year, and I know that Steve seems to think that most of it is done, but I don't know what else was intended to be done with that one.
Well, if it's been a couple of years and nobody's noticed, it probably isn't really significant. Probably was a waste of money to start with.
That's what I'm thinking, that it's money that's just sitting there. But I'm wondering, instead of putting it back into the reserve, is there a way we can take that money and put an article to use that amount of money towards the taxes?
I don't see why not.
It's just
As long as the people voted on it.
I mean, that would be less that we'd have to take out of,
We're gonna put it back to only take it out anyway.
that's right.
Do we have to put that in front of the voters since they've already voted on it?
Yeah, because
Yes,
they voted
yes.
for a
For it to
specific
be
reason.
For a specific project.
So just put it back.
So it would have to, and it's always been the understanding that if we didn't spend it, it'd always go back to the reserve. But when you're talking $150,000 that could be sitting here, that maybe we ought to just tear it around and take and put that towards, our tax commitment. It's a thought.
The very first one, it's off there, capital. It says 903,000.
That's what we took out of the capital last year,
Okay, I mean,
plus the 90-something that we took out prior to that for the ambulance. so close to $1
Okay,
million.
that answers my question, because we had the authority to spend $1 million.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the other one that was on here in error is, the cruiser was on here for $10,900 and some dollars. And when I went back and did the research on that one, it got paid out of the police department operational budget instead of out of the reserve budget. So I've transferred that back because it should go to the town's fund balance, because that's where it was spent out of. There is money left over for the repeaters, which is being asked for this year, so that's the question, if we want to do it, and the repeaters could be used, that money could be used for this year, if, I don't know, TJ had talked about that.
Yes. We were supposed to go over to the director of the comm center.
He was supposed to have been last Wednesday, and I haven't seen him either, so.
No, like,
So they're gonna use the money for the repeaters this year?
Well, I know they're asking for money this year, so it only makes sense to use what's already there.
Well, yeah, you don't wanna raise it again if it's already in there.
No, or take it out of reserve again,
Right.
if we've still got it. Same thing with the backhoe loan, is for some reason we pulled over more money each year. We pull over 30,000 and the loan's only 22, so there's an accumulation of money sitting there for the years past. It's cleaner for me to pull it, either say we're going to use it all to reduce taxes, or we're gonna send it all back to the reserves.
Right.
For bookkeeping purposes.
At the moment, with that extra be in the general fund?
It's in the general fund checking account, the cash is, but the fund balance is still designated to each one of these reserves.
So when you look at the fund balance, you remove all this money because it's designated already?
It's not part of the general fund balance, it's part of the capital projects,
Okay.
individual fund balances, correct. But the cash is in our checking account, that's been pulled over from the reserves.
But I mean, we're sitting there with $150,000 that we could just ask the voters to use towards lowering the taxes.
No, absolutely. That should get the increase down to nothing.
Yeah. Between that and whatever you would want to take out of the reserve this year, we could get it down there.
Well, that sounds good.
Well, I'll have those numbers for you, I can get it ready to put them in your boxes for tomorrow, what there is in each one of those that we can pull back over. I had given it to Judy, because I wanted Judy to look at it first, because she'd asked me about it. And there was a couple of them, Judy, you weren't sure if they had been finished.
Yeah, which one was it? I wasn't sure about the WCC roof, because there's $8,200 in there, but I think that roof is completed.
Although they're asking for roof money this year, is it different?
It's one the shingle part of the roof that was not addressed when the other roof project was done.
And how much were you asking for this year?
75.
75,000. I think we're getting ahead, we're going backwards again.
I think the other one was a waterfront building, wasn't it, Judy?
Yes, the other one was the waterfront. Yeah, it's not much, it's only $1,100, but I mean, I don't even know what we took the money out for down at the waterfront building. I don't remember.
Ask Steve, he might have some idea.
Repairs?
sorry,
Repairs?
probably.
Wasn't there some kind of electric upgrade there?
I don't remember. And of course, we've got money left over from the park and rec pickup, and there's money left over from pool chemicals, $259. We get into that. So
So those are instances each year after, or after the project is done, that money should go back to the reserves, I believe.
I think that's what the policy states, it has to go back.
And I mean, this hasn't been done in the past, so that's why we've got this money sitting here.
That's why I was surprised when you brought this to me, because we've never done it, but as far as I know, put any money back.
I thought we rewrote those articles, so you only took out what you needed.
But you can't always get, I mean, it's like there's only a couple $100 left out of the public works truck or the pool chemicals. I mean, it's always a guesstimate when you budget for something. And then whatever's left over should go back to the reserve fund.
No, you're missing my point.
What?
It's like the truck.
Right.
The article would say that you could take out up to $175,000. So therefore, if it was 174, you'd only take out 174.
I take out the full amount after we vote the budget.
But that's not what the article says.
You have, so we're gonna cut our operational cash funds each time short for that then? That's what's historically been done to help our cash flow, is we pull it out after the first of the year, because you can only do that once a month. They only will bring you money over or accept money at the first of each month. So you've got to put your request in at the end of the month to get it. So from what I researched and went back to the last 3 or 4 years, we pull it over just as the first of the fiscal year rolls around because we don't have cash flow, and that helps our cash flow, and then the money's sitting there so that when the project is done, we have the cash to pay it rather than waiting a whole month to get the money from Basin. Now, that's wrong.
Well, that's what I understood, that when we did that, it was totaled up to, let's say we took $350,000. We withdrew the $350,000 that sat here, and then as the projects were done, it was taken away from that amount of money.
Correct, but the problem is we've never sent back what was not
Right,
spent.
we've never sent back any money.
And we should.
It's just been sitting over there. Huh?
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 I was just pointing out that we changed the wording of the article to try to prevent that. Apparently it was a waste of time.
I don't want to borrow tax anticipation money to fund the capital reserve that's funded by the reserve in the first place.
And I'm not asking you to do that.
Well, that's what I have to do.
Yes.
For the withdrawing the 4.5%, when do we do that? So would we need the 12/31/2019 date, or is it done as soon as it's voted, or when does the 4.5% come out?
We don't do that until after the article's been passed.
Okay, so it'd be 4.5% as of 6/30.
Right.
2019.
No,
Or-
it's based on the 6/30/18 that's there.
So the previous years.
Yes, the amount that they give us, the 4.5% is based on 6/30/18
Okay.
value.
Okay.
We can pull over for this year.
Right.
Okay, oh, that makes sense.
But we typically pull it over after July 1st. Once, I mean, the town meeting vote is in June.
Yeah.
But we wait until after the first of the fiscal year to pull it over, so that it's recorded as coming in during that fiscal year vote.
Okay, so like if your revenue, I mean, if the stocks go way up, you still wouldn't take out any additional amount?
We don't,
Okay.
they just, from what I
Just do for the
understand
next
from
year.
the policy is that it's a once-a-year thing. And we pull over 4.5% or more in last year's case, which the policy allows the selectmen at their discretion, if needed, to pull over more. But the recommended by the policy is 4.5% as of June 30th of the last fiscal year.
Okay, so where do we stand? It's getting later.
So Wednesday, we're going to vote on this
Yes.
separately. And we'll have more numbers on the reserves.
Right.
Yes.
We-
That's cool.
And you're gonna vote on the sewer and the cemetery as well.
Yes.
For the budget committee, for our vote, is Monday, April 8th at 6 PM? Is it? Monday.
A good 5.
Be hard. I think I asked, check with people to see if 6 would work.
Oh,
I could check
you
again
need-
with 5. I have
For
some.
votes, you need.
Yes, I checked
You
with
may
everyone.
have
They
to
said
come
they
back.
could for 6, but we don't have a space to meet. Could there be a space provided? I think there's an ordinance thing at 5:30 and then something at 7. So if we could meet somewhere else, that would work, or just try to.
break room.
Break room with the
Break room
selectmen,
or the
selectmen.
right beside my office, that's big enough for 4 or 5. True, true. I get lost up there.
I do too.
Well, no, down.
That's why I'm not sure we have
Oh,
six.
yeah.
Yes, Judy.
But if we have 8 members,
We need 4.
Need
We need 4.
it's only 4?
Yep.
4's
Right here.
yeah, we checked it.
I never do anyway. But I think we should have 5.
We did that, yeah.
But if all
At least,
8 come,
Well, that's true.
4.
then if it's a tie, then the motion fails. If it's, in the event of a tie, the motion voted upon shall be deemed not to have passed.
I mean, the same thing could happen if somebody abstained. You
Same
said
thing,
that
that's
was
not, yeah, that's not.
If you had all numbers.
We've jumped around on that, haven't we? This is from Maine Municipal?
I think that's our
Or
ordinance.
through?
That's our ordinance.
Generally speaking, if your abstention is not a vote in support.
No, but just if you have an even number, you want the higher number.
What? You have an even number,
It wasn't 4 and 4, it was 5. You needed 5 for a quorum. I'm just talking the quorum.
Well, I suppose I'd say 5 of us make a quorum. We'd have to, at least 3 of us would have
No,
to be
3
here.
of you make a quorum.
Right,
But they have no members.
but
but we have it in ours that you have to have 3 votes to pass anything. Even if there's 3 selectmen, they have to be unanimous.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
so if it was a 2-to-1 vote, it wouldn't pass anyway.
Because we had 4 here a couple of years ago from the library, 2 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained, and the motion didn't pass. We came back and voted on it later, but.
Okay, so our next, we have a selectmen's meeting tomorrow night at 6. And then Wednesday night at 6, we will be here to,
5.
Wednesday's at 5, I thought.
Wednesday,
You put it in the paper at 6 because that's what you guys said last week.
yes, it's at 6.
the selectmen's meeting
Tomorrow night is 6 o'clock and Wednesday night is 6 o'clock.
That's what you guys said last week, that's what we
Yes.
reported.
That's what we gotta do then.
Because it's not a budget workshop, that's why. It is a regular selectmen's meeting, so it has to be at 6 o'clock.
And that's
Well,
the
I could have been at
reports.
5, but it'll be at 6.
That's what people have now, because you guys couldn't get it into the paper as a.
Is it on the board at 6
I believe so.
up front?
I believe so. And I don't know what I did with my,
I think it's on the email that came up today in the agendas too.
I don't know what I did with my agenda. I had it. No, it's in my packet.
I've got it.
I think it says 6 o'clock.
It says 6 on the agenda.
Okay. That's all right. Kim said it's 6 o'clock. Okay, so that's where we stand. I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Adjourn.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
That means our complaining noise off and I just.
They are.